When most people hear silence in a relationship, they translate it into one word: rejection. They assume that if someone doesn't speak, doesn't call, doesn't text, or doesn't lean in with affection, then it must mean they don't care. But that assumption is one of the biggest mistakes you can make when dealing with an avoidant personality, because silence in their world does not equal absence. In fact, silence is often the loudest proof of love they know how to give. It sounds paradoxical, but let's break it down. When an avoidant falls in love, they do not experience it as a soft, gentle unfolding. They experience it as a tidal wave. For you, love may feel like warmth, safety, connection. For them, love feels like intensity, pressure, vulnerability, even danger. Their nervous system interprets closeness as a potential threat. So when their feelings deepen, when they realize they're actually attached to you, their system goes into overdrive. They don't retreat because they don't care. They retreat because they care so much their body doesn't know how to process it. Think about that. When they're quiet, when they disappear, when they suddenly need space, it isn't emptiness you're looking at. It's overwhelmed love. It's an intensity they can't yet articulate. Silence is their attempt to regulate. It's the only way they know how to contain the storm. And if you misinterpret that silence as abandonment, you miss the deeper truth. They're not walking away. They're holding on the only way they know how. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Most people chase when faced with avoidant silence. They panic. They think, if I don't pull them back, I'll lose them forever. But what happens when you chase someone who is silent out of love? You push them further into overwhelm. You confirm the very fear they are running from, the fear of being consumed, controlled, or suffocated. The silence deepens, not because they don't love you, but because your reaction has reinforced their instinct to retreat. So what's the antidote? It's the exact opposite of what your instincts scream at you to do. You don't chase. You don't force. You don't demand. You learn to hold the silence without fear. You recognize it for what it is: a sign of love expressed in a language that doesn't sound like yours. And in that moment, you shift the power dynamic. Because now, instead of interpreting their silence as rejection, you begin to interpret it as intimacy expressed differently. That changes everything. And let me give you the philosophical depth of this: silence is not nothingness. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is space. And in space, things grow. A seed doesn't sprout if it's suffocated. It grows in soil, dark, quiet, unseen. That's what avoidant silence is. It's the soil where their attachment is trying to grow roots. But if you dig it up every 5 minutes to check if it's sprouting, you kill it. You need patience. You need trust. You need to see the invisible movement beneath the surface. Now, this doesn't mean you tolerate neglect. This doesn't mean you accept toxic avoidance where someone uses silence as punishment. Let's be clear. There's a difference between manipulation and regulation. The kind of silence I'm talking about here isn't the weaponization of distance. It's the struggle of someone who feels deeply but doesn't yet know how to show it. And if you can distinguish between the two, you'll begin to see silence not as a void, but as an overflow. Here's the shocking truth. Most people never hear an avoidant silence can be louder than anyone else's words. Because if they didn't care, there would be no need for silence at all. Indifference doesn't retreat. Indifference doesn't regulate. Indifference simply moves on. The very fact that they withdraw instead of walking away is proof that something powerful is happening inside of them. Silence is not the absence of love. Silence is the evidence of love they don't yet know how to express. And if you can understand that, you stop reacting in fear and start responding with wisdom. You stop seeing yourself as abandoned, and you start seeing yourself as chosen. Chosen by someone who loves you so much it terrifies them. That's not weakness. That's not rejection. That is love, raw and unpolished, asking for space to breathe. So the next time you face avoidant silence, don't let your mind rush to panic. Don't let your insecurities write the story for you. Instead, pause and remind yourself silence here is not absence. Silence here is overwhelmed love trying to find its voice. And if you can hold that truth without fear, you give the relationship something most people never give an avoidant: the space to transform silence into connection. Because sometimes the quietest moments hold the loudest declarations of love. When most people think about love, they imagine closeness. They think love is about holding hands, endless conversations, being together all the time, never wanting to pull away. But if you're dealing with an avoidant, you need to understand something that turns that definition upside down. Withdrawal, for them, is often their version of closeness. And I know that sounds contradictory, but listen carefully, because this shift in perspective could save you from sabotaging the very connection you're trying to build. Here's why. An avoidant's deepest fear is not rejection. Their deepest fear is being consumed. They fear that if they let themselves go all in, they'll lose their identity, their independence, their ability to breathe. That fear didn't just appear out of nowhere. It's rooted in their earliest experiences, in moments where closeness felt overwhelming, where depending on someone didn't feel safe, where vulnerability meant pain, not comfort. So when they finally feel deep affection for you, when they feel attachment rising up in their chest, their instinct isn't to lean in like most people. Their instinct is to lean out. And here's the shocking paradox: the moment they withdraw is often the moment they feel most connected. Their withdrawal isn't proof of less love. It's proof that love has reached a level intense enough to trigger their survival instincts. If they didn't care, they wouldn't bother pulling back. Indifference doesn't need space. But love, real raw love, activates the very defenses they built to protect themselves from pain. So think about what this means in real time. You're with someone avoidant. Things are going well. The intimacy deepens. You feel it. You think, finally, we're getting closer. And then suddenly, they go quiet. They cancel plans. They disappear for a while. And your mind screams, they're leaving. They don't care. It's over. But in reality, that withdrawal is not them falling out of love. It's them falling deeper into it. It's them stepping back, not because they want out, but because they're terrified of being all the way in. Most people don't understand this, and that's where everything breaks down. They chase the avoidant when they withdraw. They demand closeness. They beg for reassurance. They push for conversation. And what happens? The avoidant retreats further, because in their psychology, that push is proof of the very suffocation they're afraid of. Your pursuit doesn't bring them closer. It convinces them that closeness equals loss of freedom. And then the cycle repeats. You chase harder, they retreat further, until both sides feel misunderstood and unloved. But if you can shift your perspective, if you can see their withdrawal as a distorted expression of closeness rather than a rejection, you immediately change the dynamic. You stop chasing. You stop panicking. You hold steady. And in that steadiness, you communicate something powerful. Your need for space doesn't threaten me. Your withdrawal doesn't make me insecure. I can love you without clinging. And when they feel that, that's when the avoidant begins to trust. That's when the walls start to crack. Because what they fear isn't love. It's losing themselves in love. Show them they can have both, and you unlock a deeper connection than most people ever experience. This isn't just psychology, it's philosophy. Think about the balance of opposites. Fire needs oxygen, but too much oxygen extinguishes it. A plant needs sunlight, but too much burns it. Love with an avoidant follows the same law. Closeness is needed, but in doses that allow space. Their withdrawal is not a denial of love. It's their way of balancing intensity with safety. If you fight it, you break the balance. If you respect it, you allow love to breathe. And here's the part that will surprise you most: withdrawal doesn't last forever. It's not permanent. For an avoidant, pulling back is like coming up for air. They need the space to breathe so they can re-engage without drowning. And if you can trust that rhythm, instead of resisting it, you discover that withdrawal and closeness are not opposites. They are part of the same dance. The pullback is simply the inhale before the exhale of connection. So don't misinterpret withdrawal. Don't let your insecurities write the story for you. Instead, recognize it as love in disguise. A fragile, unfamiliar love that doesn't yet know how to flow freely. And when you choose not to panic, when you choose to stand in strength instead of fear, you communicate something that an avoidant rarely feels: safety. And that safety is what allows them to come closer, not by force, but by choice. Remember this: their withdrawal is not a wall against you. It is a wall against their own fear. And sometimes the greatest proof of love is not in how close they get, but in how carefully they step back to protect what they're feeling. Because when an avoidant withdraws, it isn't distance. It's love wrestling with fear, trying to find its balance. One of the most misunderstood behaviors of an avoidant partner is the way they seem to test the relationship without ever announcing they're doing it. They don't test you with words. They test you with silence. They test you with distance. They test you with what looks like indifference. But make no mistake, this is not because they want to hurt you or push you away permanently. It's because, for them, safety has to be proven before vulnerability can be offered. And their way of proving it isn't straightforward. It's subtle, often frustrating, but it's deeply revealing once you understand what's happening beneath the surface. See, most people think of love as a declaration. I love you. I'm here for you. You mean everything to me. But an avoidant doesn't trust words, not even their own. For them, words feel too risky, too exposed. Instead, they watch. They observe. They measure. They retreat to see if you'll come unglued, if you'll rage, if you'll panic, if you'll chase. Because here's the psychology at play. If you can't handle their silence, they believe you can't handle their soul. If you can't stay grounded when they step back, then how could you possibly handle the rawness of them stepping forward? That's why so many people fail this unspoken test. They take distance as rejection. They react with fear. They lash out, cling harder, demand answers. And in that moment, the avoidant silently concludes, I can't be safe here. If this small step back creates chaos, then opening my heart fully will destroy me. They're not testing your patience as much as they're testing the environment, testing whether their love can survive outside of their protective walls. Now here's the paradox. If you can remain calm when they retreat, if you can hold steady without chasing, without collapsing into insecurity, you communicate something powerful: safety. You tell them, not with words, but with presence, I am not threatened by your distance. I don't need to control you to feel secure. I'm here whether you're close or whether you need space. That, to an avoidant, is revolutionary, because safety is not proven to them by closeness. Safety is proven by how you handle their absence. This is where philosophy meets psychology. Every human being carries a tension between freedom and connection. Too much connection without freedom feels like suffocation. Too much freedom without connection feels like isolation. Avoidants lean heavily toward freedom because their nervous system equates connection with danger. So when they test, they are essentially asking, can I have both? Can I stay free and still be loved? Can I step back and not be abandoned? Can I show you my fear and still be chosen? Most people never answer those questions correctly because they react to the test instead of responding with awareness. They try to force closeness. They try to drag the avoidant back into the light. But what if instead of resisting the test, you respected it? What if instead of panicking, you realized this retreat isn't the end? It's the beginning of trust. Think about it. If someone withdraws and you chase them, you confirm their fear. But if they withdraw and you stay grounded, you disconfirm it. You prove that intimacy can exist without entrapment. You show that love doesn't mean losing freedom. And that's the key their nervous system has been searching for all along. And here's the empowering party. You don't need to beg them to open up. You don't need to demand their vulnerability. All you need to do is master your own response to their distance. Because when they see that their silence doesn't unravel you, they start to believe maybe, just maybe, their vulnerability won't either. So the next time you feel them pulling back, pause, breathe, remind yourself this isn't a rejection, it's a test. They're not asking, do you love me when I'm close? They're asking, do you still love me when I'm far? And if you can answer yes with your actions, not just your words, then the day will come when they inch closer, not out of obligation, but out of choice. Because that's the secret with avoidance. You cannot force their vulnerability, but you can create the conditions where it naturally unfolds. And those conditions are built in your response to their tests, not with fear, not with pressure, but with presence, patience, and strength. Remember this, when they pull away, they are not abandoning you. They are asking you silently, am I safe here? Can my love survive here? And if you can answer that without panic, without fear, then their test is not a wall. It's a doorway. And once they know the doorway leads to safety, they'll step through it. One of the biggest misconceptions about avoidance is that when they shut down emotionally, it means they don't feel anything. People look at their calm exterior, their flat tone, their lack of expression, and they think, see, they don't care. They're detached. But the truth is almost the exact opposite. Their shutdown isn't a lack of emotion. It's an overload of emotion. It's not emptiness you're witnessing, it's overflow. Think about how an electrical system works. When too much current runs through the wires, the circuit breaker flips to protect the house from burning down. It's not that the house went dark because there was no electricity. It went dark because there was too much. That's what happens inside the nervous system of an avoidant when intimacy gets intense. Their system flips the breaker. They go quiet. They shut down. Not because there's nothing happening, but because there's too much happening for them to process safely. Now, this is where most people misinterpret the moment and make critical mistakes. Instead of recognizing the shutdown as a form of self-protection, they see it as disinterest. They push harder. They demand conversation. They take the flatness personally. And in doing so, they make the avoidant retreat even further, reinforcing the very fear that caused the shutdown in the first place. Here's what you have to understand. Emotional shutdown is not the absence of love. It's the evidence of how deeply love is being felt. It's the nervous system's way of saying, this is too much, too fast, too overwhelming. And once you recognize that, you can stop misinterpreting their behavior and start responding with wisdom. Philosophically, this moment represents one of the greatest challenges in any relationship, the tension between expression and restraint. Some people, when they feel, they overflow outward. They cry, they talk, they pour their emotions everywhere. That's their release valve. But avoidants don't release outward. They implode inward. They contain, they suppress, they regulate by holding it all inside. And if you're not careful, you'll misinterpret their implosion as apathy instead of intensity. So what do you do in that moment? You don't chase. You don't try to pry them open with force. You don't demand immediate access to what they're feeling. Instead, you respect the shutdown as a necessary pause. You hold steady. You give them room to reset. Because the paradox is this: when you stop demanding their emotional availability, you create the safety that makes them more emotionally available. It's like trying to coax a frightened animal out of hiding. If you corner it, it panics. If you wait patiently, showing you're not a threat, eventually it emerges on its own. The avoidance heart works the same way. Their shutdown isn't meant to push you out forever. It's their nervous system's way of retreating into a cave where they can breathe again. If you allow the process without judgment, you become the one place in their life where love doesn't feel like suffocation. Now, let's go deeper. Emotional flooding and avoidance is not just about the present moment, it's about memory. Their body remembers times when vulnerability led to rejection or shame. So when they feel too much, those memories get triggered. Their shutdown is a time capsule. It's their nervous system reliving old wounds. And your role, if you choose it, is not to break the capsule open, but to show them that this time is different. This time, closeness won't crush them. This time, emotions won't destroy the bond. This requires strength on your part. It requires the ability to separate your own fears of abandonment from their fears of engulfment. If you mistake their shutdown as rejection, you'll react from insecurity. But if you see it for what it really is, emotional overload, you'll respond with patience, with calmness, with groundedness. And in that response, you show them what their nervous system has been searching for all along: safety and connection. And here's the powerful truth. The avoidant doesn't want to stay shut down forever. No human being does. We're wired for connection. But for them, the path to connection is slower, more fragile, more delicate. Their shutdown is not the end of the story. It's just the intermission. And if you can hold steady through that intermission, the curtain will rise again. And when it does, you'll see their emotions return, often more deeply and authentically than before. So don't let the quiet fool you. Don't let the blank expression convince you of emptiness. Don't assume that because they look calm, nothing is happening inside. Often, the calm exterior is the mask covering the storm. And if you can respect the storm without fear, you become the anchor they didn't even know they were searching for. Remember, this emotional shutdown in an avoidant is not a lack of love. It is love overflowing to the point of collapse. And if you can interpret it correctly, you won't run from it. You'll stand firm in it. Because sometimes the greatest proof of love is not in the words spoken or the tears shed, but in the silence that hides the flood. One of the most shocking truths about avoidance is this: the colder they seem on the outside, the more deeply attached they often are on the inside. It's counterintuitive, isn't it? We've been conditioned to believe warmth equals love and coldness equals detachment. But for avoidance, that formula doesn't hold. In fact, their apparent coldness is often the strongest mask for their deepest attachment. Let me explain why. When an avoidant starts to love, it triggers a primal fear in them. Fear of dependency, fear of exposure, fear of losing control. So what do? They put on armor. They create distance. They act indifferent. They hide behind coolness. Not because they don't feel, but because they feel too much. That mask of coldness is not protection from you. It's protection from the intensity they feel for you. Think about it. If they truly didn't care, there would be no need for a mask at all. Indifference doesn't hide itself. It simply walks away. Indifference doesn't need to look cold. It doesn't need to act detached. It just is detached. But if someone is going out of their way to act distant, if they are working hard to appear unaffected, that effort itself is proof there's something they're trying to contain. The colder they look, the hotter the fire burning underneath. This is why so many people misread avoidance and sabotage the relationship. They take the mask at face value. They see the lack of expression, the quiet tone, the retreat into independence. And they say, that's it. They don't care. They're done. So they give up, or worse, they lash out in anger. And in doing so, they miss the truth that the coldness wasn't rejection, it was protection. Now, let's take this deeper. Philosophically, masks have always played a role in human life. In ancient theater, actors wore masks not to hide, but to reveal something larger than themselves. The mask was a symbol, a way of channeling something powerful. In the same way, The avoidance mask of coldness is not the absence of emotion. It's the containment of emotion too big to handle in its raw form. The mask is their survival strategy. It's their way of saying, I feel, but I can't show it yet. And here's the psychological kicker the avoidant knows on some level, that if they revealed their true depth of attachment too soon, it would terrify them. So they keep it under wraps until they feel safe enough to let it leak out. But the very act of masking is proof of the attachment. You don't guard something worthless. You guard what matters most. This means your role in these moments is not to rip the mask off. It's not to demand they show you everything right now. It's to recognize what the mask really means. It's to look past the coldness and understand that what you're really seeing is vulnerability in disguise. And when you respond with steadiness, with calmness, with presence, you communicate something their nervous system rarely feels. You don't need to hide here. You're safe. And over time, that safety is what allows the mask to fall away. Now, let me make this practical. Imagine you're in a conversation with your avoidant partner and they suddenly go flat. Their voice turns neutral, their face expressionless. You feel the wall go up. Your instinct might be to get louder, to demand reassurance, to accuse them of not caring. But what if instead you took a breath, stayed calm, and reminded yourself, this is not detachment, this is defense. And by not reacting in fear, by not escalating, you quietly communicate, I'm not afraid of your mask. I can handle your silence. I can stand steady while you find your footing. That is what disarms the mask. That is what makes them trust. Because here's the paradox. The mask of coldness is not built to keep you out forever. It's built to protect their heart until they know you won't shatter it. And if you can pass that test, not by force, but by presence, you'll discover the warmth beneath the cold. And when avoidance finally let that warmth show, it comes out raw, unfiltered, and real. So don't be fooled by appearances. Don't assume that distance equals disinterest or that coldness equals emptiness. Often, the ones who look most detached are the ones who care the deepest. The mask isn't proof of absence. It's proof of value. Remember this, when an avoidant looks cold, it isn't because they don't feel. It's because they feel so much they don't yet know how to show it. And if you can see through the mask, you'll realize you were never dealing with distance at all. You were dealing with love, hidden in disguise. Here's the paradox that throws almost everyone off. When an avoidant starts to truly love you, the first symptom you'll notice is not closeness, but distance. That feels backward. It feels wrong. Our culture has taught us that love should always look like pursuit, like affection, like endless expressions of desire. But for the avoidant, love doesn't start with pursuit, it starts with retreat. Their very first act of attachment is often to pull away. Why? Because love for them is not safe territory. It's foreign. It's loaded with danger signals. Their nervous system interprets deepening affection not as comfort, but as threat. The closer they get to you emotionally, the louder their alarms go off internally. It's not that they don't feel. It's that they feel so much, so fast, that their body tells them they need to step back. The retreat is not rejection. It's regulation. It's their way of keeping the fire from burning them alive. Most people misinterpret this and panic. They think, if they loved me, they'd stay close. If they cared, they wouldn't pull away. And so, when they see distance, they assume love is dying. But the truth is, for the avoidant, distance is how love begins. It's the awkward, clumsy opening step of their dance toward intimacy. It looks like a wall, but it's actually a doorway. Think about this philosophically in life. The things that carry the most value often come wrapped in paradox. Strength doesn't look like aggression. True strength is restraint. Freedom isn't the absence of structure. Freedom is found within boundaries. Love with an avoidant follows this same paradox. It doesn't begin with closeness. It begins with space. That space is not a void. It's an incubation chamber. It's where their love takes shape before it can safely emerge. Now, here's where your response becomes everything. If you chase them when they step back, if you panic and demand closeness, you interrupt the process. You confirm their deepest fear, that love means losing freedom, losing air, losing self. But if you can resist the panic, if you can hold steady, you allow the process to unfold naturally. Their retreat becomes a cycle, not a collapse. They step back, they reset, and then they step forward again, slowly, cautiously, but with increasing trust. This is where wisdom separates itself from impulse. Your impulse may scream, close the gap, pull them in. But wisdom says, hold your ground, let them breathe, trust the rhythm. And when you act from wisdom instead of fear, you create a space where their love doesn't suffocate them. It strengthens them. Let me take this one step deeper. For the avoidant, love doesn't start with joy. It starts with fear. And fear, when handled well, transforms into trust. That transformation doesn't happen overnight. It happens in cycles. Retreat, return, distance, closeness, fear, then faith. If you can see the distance not as an ending, but as a necessary beginning, you'll stop fighting the process and start flowing with it. Now, this doesn't mean you accept being mistreated or ignored indefinitely. There's a difference between healthy space and toxic neglect. What I'm talking about here is the genuine pullback that comes from emotional intensity, not from lack of care. And the way you tell the difference is simply, do they come back? Because if they do, that distance was never abandonment, it was a reset. And when they do return, something subtle but profound happens. Each time they step back and come forward again, their nervous system learns a new lesson. Love doesn't drown me. Love doesn't strip me of myself. Love is survivable. That is the real transformation. That is how avoidance slowly turned distance into devotion. Not by avoiding forever, but by testing the cycle until they realize the cycle itself is safe. So when you see them pull back, don't let your insecurities write the story. Don't assume it's rejection. Don't assume it's the end. Instead, see it for what it is, a doorway into a love that doesn't follow the script you expected. It's a different rhythm, a different language, but it's love nonetheless. And maybe the greatest lesson here is this: love doesn't always look like what you were taught. Sometimes it wears the mask of distance. Sometimes it begins with silence. Sometimes it hides behind fear. But if you have the eyes to see it and the strength to hold steady, you'll discover that what looked like distance was actually devotion learning how to walk. So remember this: with an avoidant, love doesn't knock on your door with flowers and grand declarations. It often shows up first as retreat. Don't confuse the retreat for rejection. It's not the end of love, it's the birthplace of it. Because sometimes the first step love takes isn't forward, it's back.